things that make me happy are when I've not got to look at a clock.
And eating good food really makes me happy.
Just being here really, it's just life is good, isn't it?
Just getting what you want.
She makes me happy. Sunshine, music, just being, I don't know, healthy.
I like to party, I like to go out.
Hang out with friends, going dancing.
I guess money also makes you happy.
Something where you're not relying on money.
My cat.
My nephew.
My wife makes me really happy. And drinking.
A lying. So being comfortable.
Sleeping, really.
And movies as well.
Watching Liverpool beat Man United away.
Just be drunk.
I don't actually know what makes me happy.
More to life.
More to life.
I'd like to think there's more to life than this.
I often wonder if there is. I don't think there's more to life.
I'd like to think there is, though.
I don't know really.
Don't know everything that goes on in life, do you? So
Yes, I do think there's more to life than this.
I don't know, really.
I'm an Anglican clergyman, and I love the Anglican Church, but I was very amused to see a spoof article written in a magazine. It was entitled, "God to Leave Anglican Church." This is what it said. God has indicated that he too is to leave the Anglican Church. According to sources close to God, he's been unhappy for some time with the direction the Anglican Church has been taking and has now finally had enough. An Anglican spokesman said, "Losing God is a bit of a blow, but it's just something we're going to have to learn to live with." For much of my life, I've not been a Christian. Thinking about it, I really had three objections. The first one was that it seemed boring. Everything about church to me just seemed dull. I suppose I had sympathy with something that Robert Louis Stevenson entered in his diary, as if writing down an extraordinary phenomenon. He wrote, "I have been to church today and am not depressed." Secondly, not only did I find it boring, I also thought it was untrue. I had intellectual objections to Christianity. I remember when I was at school, I entered into a school debate, and I spoke in favor of the motion that was, "This house believes that Christianity is untrue." And I actually won the debate. And my third objection was that it just seemed irrelevant. How can someone who lived 2,000 years ago, more than 2,000 miles away, have any relevance on my life today? But at the same time, I think I was a little bit ignorant. I really didn't actually know that much about Christianity at all. And I think that's true for lots of people. Previously, when I worked in London, one of my roles there was as an assistant chaplain at the Brompton Hospital in London. And we would go around and visit the sick. And one of the things you might occasionally do is offer if people wanted to take Holy Communion. And it's amazing some of the responses that you get. These are some of the real responses to the question that we ask, would you like to take Holy Communion? One man said, "No thanks, I'm Anglican." Another said, "No thanks, I asked for cereal." And the third one actually said, "No thanks, I've never been circumcised." So a bit like them, I think really I was ignorant. And I can certainly say now, although I didn't necessarily feel it at the time, but looking back, I can see that something was missing. I was always looking forward to the next thing in my life rather than enjoying the present. So when I was at school, I thought, well, there must be more to life than this. Maybe if I can become a school prefect, that might be meaning and purpose in my life. And then I became a very lowly prefect, and it was great. But about 3 weeks later, I thought, there must be more to life than this. And then I thought, well, maybe when I leave school, that's when life will really take off, and that's what it'll all be about. And I left school, and it was great. And then after about 3 weeks, I thought, there must be more to life than this. And then I thought, if I can just only get a girlfriend. And still to this day, I don't quite know how I managed it, but I got a girlfriend. But after about 3 weeks, I thought there must be more to life than this. And I think for many people, we go through life a little bit like that, always searching for something more. The Hollywood actor Jim Carrey said this: "I wish everybody could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamt of, so they will know that it's not the answer." Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." I'm that one person who can satisfy that spiritual hunger that deep down lies in every human heart. That all those other things that are good, things like relationships, work, hobbies, they're good, but somehow they always leave us thinking, is there more? A Japanese woman once said to us, she said, in Japan, we need to eat rice. She said it's like we have two stomachs, one for ordinary food and one for rice. And no matter how much ordinary food we eat, we never feel full. We never feel satisfied until we eat rice. And I think to her, Jesus would say, I am the rice of life. I'm that person that can fill that other stomach. The great journalist Bernard Levin, who was not a Christian, said this: "Countries are full of people who have all the material comforts they desire, together with such non-material blessings as a happy family, and yet lead lives of quiet and at times noisy desperation, understanding nothing but the fact that there is a hole inside them. And however much food and drink they pour into it, however many motor cars and television sets they stuff it with, however many well-balanced children and loyal friends they parade around the edges of it, it aches." Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." Now, why is that? Well, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So first of all, Jesus brings direction to a lost world. He said, "I am the way." Friends of mine, when their children were younger, had a maid, and the maid was still trying to learn English when the children were making a noise in their bedroom. So she ran into the room, and she was meant to say to them, "What on earth are you doing?" But she actually said to them, "What are you doing on earth?" And the children froze, stunned by the question. Now, it's a great question, isn't it? What are you doing on earth? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? Is there any ultimate meaning or purpose to our lives? What happens when we die? These are really big questions. They're sort of the first order questions of life, if you like. And I think a lot of people are searching for answers. Leo Tolstoy, the author, wrote a book called A Confession, which is really a story of his life. He writes about his search for meaning and purpose in his own life. And he said that when he was young, he thought maybe satisfaction lies in pleasure. So he entered the social whirlwind of Moscow and St. Petersburg, and he lived a wild life, but concluded that didn't really bring fulfillment or satisfaction. There must be more. So then he thought, maybe I'll find meaning in money. And he inherited a large estate and began to make a lot of money from his books, but that didn't satisfy him either. So then he thought, maybe fame and success, that's what I need. And, he wrote very famous books. His novel, War and Peace, is one of the most important novels ever written. And he became hugely successful in his lifetime. But again, he says in A Confession, it didn't satisfy him. Then he thought, well, maybe family life is what I need to bring me satisfaction. So he got married in 1862. He had a very happy marriage. They had 13 children, which he said somewhat distracted him from his search for meaning in life. And after all of this, however, there was still one question that drove Tolstoy to the edge of suicide. And the question was this: what meaning has my life that the inevitability of death does not destroy? And looking into philosophy, the only answer he could come up with was this. He wrote, In the infinity of space and the infinity of time, infinitely small particles mutate with infinite complexity. Unsurprisingly, he didn't find that very satisfying either. But eventually, he found what he was looking for in the peasant people of Russia, in their faith in God through Jesus Christ. And ultimately, there's only one relationship that is completely loving and totally ongoing, and that's a relationship with God. Now, sometimes people say to me, well, what difference does that actually make to your life if you have that relationship? And forgive me for using an analogy, because as I said earlier, it's not like I was consciously searching for things beforehand. My life, I wasn't unhappy in my life. But when I was a child, I know I hopefully don't look old enough, but we only had a black and white television set. And I remember the day when my father came home with a color television set, and we turned it on. And my sister and I, we were amazed by these crystal clear color images. And if you like, that's a little bit of an analogy to describe the difference that coming to know Jesus can make. Because once you've seen those clear color images, you never want to go back to black and white. Jesus said, I am the way. Secondly, Jesus brings reality to a confused world. He said, I am the truth. Sometimes people say to you, well, Miles, it's great, you know, that God satisfies this hunger that you have, but I don't have that need. Isn't this just a crutch for weak people? I mean, it's lovely that it helps you, but it's not for me. But logically, that can't be the case, because if it's true, then it's true for everyone. And if it's not true, then actually it's not lovely for somebody who believes it if it's untrue, because in a way, they're deluded. C.S. Lewis put it this way: Christianity is a statement which, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The one thing it cannot be is moderately important. So that's the question. Is it true? The atheist Richard Dawkins said this: faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is the belief in spite of, even perhaps because of, the lack of evidence. But I hadn't realized how much evidence there is. And one of the things we'll do later on in Alpha is look at the historical evidence for the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And the resurrection is really the linchpin of Christianity. And it's fascinating to me to see how many people who are used to looking at evidence have come to the conclusion that it's true. So one former professor of history at Oxford University described the resurrection as the best attested fact in history. And I hadn't realized also how many pioneers of modern science were also believers. Descartes, Newton, Kepler, Galileo, Locke, Copernicus, Faraday, Boyle, Mendel, Kelvin, Pasteur, Lister, Maxwell. Professor James Simpson, who pioneered safe and pain-free surgery, was once asked, Professor Simpson, what was your greatest discovery? And he said this: actually, the greatest discovery I ever made was the day I discovered Jesus Christ. But when Jesus said, I am the truth, he was talking about more than just an intellectual truth. You see, the Hebrew understanding of truth was truth as experienced. If you like, it's the difference between intellectual knowledge and personal knowledge. Head knowledge, as it were, and heart knowledge. So if I may use another analogy, I've been married to Sarah for 17 years. And let's say before I'd ever met Sarah, I walked into a bookshop. And there, on one of the shelves, was a book entitled Sarah, the Amazing Woman. And I'd taken the book down and I'd begun to flick through it, and there I saw chapter 1, her sparkling personality. Chapter 2, her extraordinary intellect. Chapter 3, her infinite patience. Chapter 4, her potential to be a long-suffering wife. Chapter 5, her amazing cooking. Chapter 6, her sporting ability. Quite a short chapter, but shorter than mine, I might add. And if I looked at this book and then thought, wow, what an amazing woman, that would be head knowledge, intellectual knowledge. But now, after 17 years of marriage, I can say Sarah is an amazing woman. And that's heart knowledge, that's experience. And when people say Jesus is the truth, they're not just saying that they've come to the conclusion that the evidence is sound. They're also saying they've experienced a relationship with the risen Jesus. He said, I am the truth. And thirdly, Jesus brings life in a dark world. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. Jesus came to set us free from the things that spoil our lives. You know, there's a big difference between the things that we do that are wrong and mistakes we make. We all make lots of mistakes. You know how after exams, they often publish some of the mistakes that the students make. I came across some of these. One student wrote in a history exam, the Greeks were a highly sculptured people, and without them, we wouldn't have history. The Greeks also had myths. A myth is a female moth. Another wrote, Socrates was a famous Greek teacher who went around giving people advice. They killed him. Socrates died from an overdose of wedlock. After his death, his career suffered a dramatic decline. And then this is my favorite. Johann Bach wrote a great many musical compositions and had a large number of children. In between, he practiced on an old spinster which he kept up in his attic. Bach died from 1750 to the present. He was the most famous composer in the world, and so was Handel. Handel was half German, half Italian, and half English. He was very large. So the mistakes that we make, and we all make them, can be relatively harmless. But the things that we do wrong really matter. And I know from my own life, my own experience, that there is such a thing as genuine guilt. But the Christian message is good news. Actually, that's what the word gospel actually means. It means good news. And the good news is this: God loves you. He loves you and me so much that he came in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ, to live and die for us. On the cross, he took all the things that you and I ever think wrong, do wrong, or say wrong, so that we can be forgiven. He died in our place. And in fact, even if you'd been the only person alive, he still would have come and died for you. That's how much he loves us. And this means that we can be free from guilt. We can be forgiven. We can be set free from addictions. We can be set free from fear, the fear of death. Because Jesus not only died, he rose from the dead. He's conquered death. He can set us free to know God, to be in a relationship with him. He has set us free to change, to become that person that deep down maybe you've always longed to be. He's set us free to love with a new dimension. Because when you experience the love of God poured into your heart by the Holy Spirit, then you have a new capacity to love others. Because all of this isn't just about making ourselves feel good. It's about being able to go out into the world and make a difference in a world that needs help. Now, it's not easy being a Christian. I'm not going to pretend it is. The rock star Alice Cooper, who came to faith quite late on, said this in an interview. He said, "It's the most rebellious thing I've ever done. Drinking beer is easy. Trashing your hotel room is easy. But being a Christian, that's a tough call. That's real rebellion." It's not easy, but nor is it boring. It's not untrue, and it's not irrelevant. It's exciting. It's true. It's relevant, because Jesus said, "I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life." If you happen to live to the age of 80, we're told that you're going to spend 20 years and 3 months asleep, 10 years and 5 months watching TV, 7 years and 6 months eating and drinking, although in Malaysia I reckon we can probably double that, 5 years and 9 months in some form of transportation, again double it, 18 months waiting in line, and get this, 6 months waiting at red traffic lights. Now, it's astonishing, isn't it, that some people in life will spend more time waiting at red traffic lights than they will asking these first-order big questions of life. And if anything that you've heard this evening has intrigued you at all, then we'd love to invite you over the next few weeks on Alpha to spend less than even 24 hours with us, going on an exciting journey of exploration together. Thank you for listening. It's now time for coffee and small groups. Enjoy.